All right. Well, welcome. We are in virtual land. We're not meeting because now we have a schedule and they booted us out. So yeah, I full disclaimer, this was not a lesson that I would think I would introduce virtually, but because I've raised you so well, I believe you can today. So this is what we're doing. Yeah, let's go. Let's make it happen. Let me share the screen. So we are, let me go back. Y'all, we're factoring when A is not equal to 1. If you don't have paper and pencil, you need to get it because you will need to work these problems out with me. This video will probably be the max of 25 minutes, maybe. Yeah, there's no way for me to tell using Zoom. So yeah, so we are factoring when A is not equal to 1. I'm gonna tell you what to write down, when to write down. So this is what we know. We know this. To factor a trinomial, move you out the way. To factor a trinomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, when a is equal to 1, we find two factors of c whose sum is b. Okay, we know that. And so this is what we've done before. We said two factors of c. We make our x, we put our c term here, and we put our b term here. And we say to ourselves, what numbers multiply to give you 10, but add to give you 7? And you also wonderfully say 5 and 2. So here we have our two binomials. Again, this is a review. You don't need to set this up. We get x plus 2 and then x plus 5. And there we have it. This will FOIL to give us the original expression of 7x squared x squared plus 7x plus 10. All right, so what do we call the x plus 2 and the x plus 5? What do we call them? Factors. Why do we call them factors? Because they multiply to give us the original expression. Okay? And so the reason why we know that this first term right here is going to be x, because our first term from our FOIL, our first term comes from this right here. Our outer and inner terms come from this right here, our 7x. And then our last term comes from the multiplication of these two last terms. Okay? So we know that x squared comes from multiplying our first term. And that's about to change because a is a 1. So a is 1 right here. So we don't worry about a because a is 1. That's the reason why we ignore a. We only deal with c, and we only deal with b because a is 1. So we don't worry about a because 1 times 1 is 1. There's no reason to mess with a. So we make our x. We have our 18, and then we have our negative 11, and we say what two numbers multiply to give you negative 11? Sorry, give you positive 18, but add to give you negative 11. We say negative 9 and negative 2. This sign, remember, this sign is positive. That means we have the same sign. That means both of the signs have to be negative. The only way we can get a negative by adding is to have two negatives, and the only way to get a positive by multiplying, you have to have two negatives. All right, so we end up with x minus 2 and times x minus 9. We know that these are factors of x squared minus 11x plus 18. That's what we know. They're factors. And if we multiply them out, we will end up with this original expression. Review. Now the new. So here's the issue that we have now. Y'all see this right here? Y'all see this? You see this? This A is not 1. I don't want you to write this down. I just want you to watch me. You know, back in the day when I was growing up, there were no little mathematical techniques to help us factor. We had to guess and check. All right. And we had to use some mathematical reasoning to come up with these two binomials since A is no longer 1. So when A is no longer 1, everybody, we have an issue. When A is not 1, to get our first term, it is still this term times this term gives us our first term. But the issue is that it's a 6. So we actually have to factor 6x squared. So there are several things that factor into 6x squared. So to set up my first term here, first right here, I can have 6 and 1. I can flip that around and have 1 and 6. Okay. I could also turn this into 3 and 2. I could also turn that into 2 and 3. Like back in the day, we had to like guess and check this stuff to figure out which one will work. Our outer and inner term comes from still the same thing. The B term comes from the sum of the outer and inner products. So that's still the same, but the B term comes from that, and our C term is made up of 10. Well, y'all, we used to have to say, well, 10 can multiply, our last term comes from the last of 4, just like we already know. So 10 can be broken down into 10 and 1. 10 can be broken down into 1 and 10. 10 can be broken down into 5 and 2. 10 can be broken down into 2 and 5. And we do all of that. We used to do all of this. A lot of this stuff used to take place in our head. Used to do all of that to see the OI. The OI gives us our B term in the middle. We used to do all of that to see what's the outer and inner. The outer and inner would be 6x plus 10x. That would give us 16x. So we knew that this didn't work. Then we'll do the outer and inner again. 1 times 10 is 10. 1 times 6 is 6. That gives us 16x. That didn't work either. Then we'll come over here and we say 3x times 2 is going to give me 6x. And then 5 times 2 is going to give me 10. Okay? And then that wouldn't work. That'd be 16, sorry. 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 6 is 16x. Remember, the OI is the sum. The sum of the OI gives me my B. And then we come over here and then we do 2 times 5. That gives me 10. And then 2 times 3 gives me 6. That still wouldn't work. It'll give me 16x. And so the issue is that this continued to go on for a while. And what I didn't do, the last thing I didn't choose to do, is that 6 breaks down into 3 and 2, right? And then 10 breaks down into 2 and 5. So now we end up with 3 times 5 is going to give you 15x. And then 2 times 2 gives you 4x. And now we're at 19x, which is the correct answer. Y'all, I'm not going to take you through all of that. You're going to love me. You're not going to love me at first, but at least you appreciate what we used to have to do back in the day to get this, play around with numbers, and then finally end up with the right answer. That's what we have to do to factor when A is not 1. Today, in 2020, there is a technique that we use to get the same thing we just did. I'm going to show you, I should have shown y'all the same number now that I think about it, but this is already pre-made, so I'm just going to flow with this. So Ahmad Jama named this the butterfly method because he said this looks like a butterfly. If you look took this out, it looks like a butterfly. There are 3 new steps that I'm introducing, And then the rest of it is what we already know. So for all the people that are bugging and just like, I don't know what to do right now, you're tripping, you need to get over yourself, because I'm gonna introduce 3 steps that I knew. That's why went over factoring by grouping yesterday, and then I'm going to move on. So the first step, this is step number 1. You don't have to write this down because it's gonna become natural. It's just gonna become natural. So you're gonna multiply the x squared term with the constant term. So the first thing we do, we multiply these 2 terms together. We multiply 2x squared and 24x. Sorry, 2x squared and 12, and that gives us 24x. That's the first thing. The second thing we're going to do, we're going to split the 24x squared into 2 terms that add to 11x. That is our x over here, right? So we're going to say split the 24x squared into 2 terms that add to 11x. All right. And I forgot something very important, but I'm gonna go back and say it because I don't want to mess up the flow. All right, so 24x squared and 11x. Well, we know that will be 3x and 8x, because 8x times 3x gives me 24x squared, and then 8x plus 3x is going to give me 11x. The reason why I leave these x's here, because people forget to put them here, and they end up, it's wrong. Okay, that's the second step that's new, right? The third step that is new is to bring down the first and the last term. So we bring down this first term of 2x squared, that forms like the wing over here. And then we bring down the 12, and that forms the other wing. Those are new. These are new. Everything else is old. Then we factor by grouping. We group this and we group this, and then we find the GCF, which would be 2x, find the GC over here, GCF over here would be 3, and then we factor by grouping. I'm not gonna go into that because I know y'all know how to do that. So the only 3 steps that are new would be to do this. Multiply these 2 terms to get this middle term. Okay? That's really the new step, because all of this right here is old. And then we're looking for factors of 24x squared that add to give us 11x. So we're looking up like that. So we draw our x, 24x squared, 11x, that'll be 8x and 3x. We bring them into the problem. And then we drop down the 2x squared and the 12, and then we factor by grouping. You're welcome. You're so welcome. You're welcome, because you don't have to go back and do this right here. You don't have to do this. You don't have to. That's what I had to do. You're welcome. You're so welcome. All you have to now do is factor by grouping. They did not have this when I was growing up. At least my teacher didn't show me this. All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing for the sake of time. Get out of my feelings. What I forgot to say is the GCF. Oh, Mr. O'Neill, how did you forget that? Oh, y'all, since this term is no longer 1, we have to now ask ourselves, is there a GCF? We have to ask ourselves that every time, because this term is no longer 1. If it was 1, there's no other number that they all have in common other than 1. But since there is a number other than 1, a is not equal to 1, we have to ask ourselves, is there a GCF? So I have this image over here, and I'm gonna use that same image to do our problem that we just went through and solved on our own. All right, so it's gonna let me erase it. Okay, it's acting weird. All right, so the first step is what we did. We multiply this and this together. When we multiply these 2 together, you write this down. Write this down. It's the first thing you write down. Write this down. Okay, pause and then write it down. So 6x squared times 10 is gonna give you 60x squared. I'm gonna come over here and make my x. So I'm looking for factors of 60x squared. My x needs to be a little wider at the bottom. That's gonna add to give me 19x. All right, for the sake of time, I know those factors are 15 and 4. So 15x and 4x. It does not matter what order you put them in. All right, so I'm gonna break this down into 4x plus 15x. And what did the next step do? Hey, got to form that wing, Bring down the 6x squared, add your plus sign because it's positive. That's the reason why we add the plus sign. Bring down your 10, add your wing. Y'all see the butterflies? Like, ooh. butterfly, ooh, butterfly, yay, butterfly. Ahmad Jama. All right, and now we do what? Factor by grouping, which we know what to do. What's the greatest common factor between 6x squared and 4x? That would be 2x. Take out a 2x, and now we have x plus 2. Greatest common factor between 15x and 10 would be 5. So bring out a 5, and we get x plus 2. And now bring our GCFs together to form one term. Okay, and then bring our, hold up, something's wrong. Then bring this together to form our last term, 2x plus 5, x plus 2. Okay, let me see something real quick. What is wrong with me, y'all? Goodness gracious. When I take out a 2x, I'm left with a 3x. I was like, what? This is not right. There's a 6. We end up with a 3x. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so this is 3x plus 2. I just realized that. I was like, what in the world? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, so factor out a 2x, and you're left with 3x, because 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Jesus, we're still in. All right, so we end up with 2x plus 5 times 3x plus 2. And these are the factors that we ended up with in the old time way. Remind me of a church song. Okay, the old time way. This is what we ended up with in the old time way, right down there, everybody. But we don't have to go through all of that because there is a technique. I don't know what the timing is, but let's get to practicing. All right, so the first thing we want to do, we want to ask ourselves, is there a GCF? Because if we don't ask ourselves that, we're going to be wrong factoring, because we have to factor completely. We have to ask ourselves, is there a GCF? Okay, so the first term, bring you down here, is 2x squared minus 15 plus 7. Is there a GCF between 2, negative 15, and 7? No, GCF will be 1. So get the butterfly. Y'all know how to do the butterfly? I don't know. Do the butterfly. I don't know what song goes with the do the butterfly. Yep, baby, dip. What's that song? Tootsie Roll. Tootsie Roll does the butterfly. I don't have a Tootsie Roll song for this. Okay, so we multiplied those two together, right? And then we're going to break this down. We're saying, remember the x squared. Don't forget that x squared, y'all. Don't forget that x squared. 14x squared. When we multiply to get you 14x squared, and then we're adding to get negative 15x. All right, so factors of 14x squared that adds to give you negative 15x. Well, those factors need to be negative 1x and then negative 14x, because negative 14x and negative 1x gives you 14x squared, and negative 14x plus negative 1x gives you negative 15x. So break you down. It does not matter which order you go. Negative 14x minus 1x. Bring the 7 down. I think I'm going too fast. Okay, I'm slowing down. Bring the 7 down, and then bring down the 2x squared, right? That's what we have so far, right, y'all? Because you're working with me and I'm slowing down. Okay, so now we factor by grouping. Group this. We're going to take out a positive 2x. When we take out a positive 2x, we are left with x minus 7. All right, group this. If I want that to be x minus 7, I need to take out a negative 1, right? If I take out a negative 1, then I end up with x minus 7. And now bring our GCF together. 2x minus 1 times x minus 7. Whoever came up with this, they're amazing. I love them to this day because I didn't have this when I was growing up. Y'all see that? That's what it is. Only 2 new steps. First step, ask ourselves, well, really 3 new steps. Okay, GCF between 8, negative 14, and 3, since that clearly doesn't have an x, can't have a GCF there. Do they have a GCF other than 1? No. So now we start creating the butterfly. So 8x squared plus times 3 is going to give me 24x squared. Okay, I can come over here and form my x. Okay, 24x squared. And then I have my negative 14x. And I'm looking for factors of 24x squared that are going to add to give me negative 14. Well, we know those numbers have to be negative, right? So the only factors I can think of 24 would be 6 and 4, 8 and 3, 12 and 2, 12 and 2. So that'll be a negative 12x and a negative 2x. All right, so I know I've said that the order doesn't matter, and I'm gonna take a moment to show you why order doesn't matter. You get the same thing. So this breaks down into negative 2x minus 12x. I'm running out of room. Bring down the wing, 8x squared. Bring down the wing, plus 3. Group U, group U. All right, so what can I take out? Greatest common factor would be a 2x, right? Take that out of there, divide that. We end up with 4x minus 1. And over here, I can take out a negative 3 to end up with 4x minus 1. And now bring our GCF together. We get 2x minus 3 times 4x minus 1. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now before I do the next problem, and then the last 3 will be yours to do, and you're gonna submit this in Floop. Yay. Well, is it gonna let me delete, go back without acting weird? You're gonna let me go back? I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just gonna erase because I don't think this is gonna work out right. All right, so let me just erase this. Okay, say for instance, I said order doesn't matter. So what if I put, dang, I forgot what I put first. What did I put first? The 2x, I put the 2x first. All right, what if I put the 12x first? So say for instance, I put the negative 12x here and the negative 2x here. So I'm gonna put the negative 12x, remember the 2x came first, and negative 2x there, bring down the 8x squared, and then plus 3. So the greatest common factor between these two would have been factor out of 4 and an x. And we factor out of 4x, we end up with 2x minus 3. Don't start acting weird. Look here, if I want a 2x minus 3, I need to factor out a negative 1, and I end up with 2x minus 3, right? And so now I end up with 4x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. And it's the same thing. They're just, what used to be on the outside is now on the inside. What used to be on the inside is now on the outside, but you still get the same binomials. And what are these? These are the factors that multiply to give you this expression. Or those are the factors that multiply to give you that expression there. So if you fold that back out, you will end up with 8x squared minus 14x plus 3. All right, let's look at this last one, and then I'm gonna let y'all do the last 3 on your own. And then we're gonna come back tomorrow for some more practice. All right, GCF, 2, negative 7, 3. No GCF other than 1. So butterfly, 2w squared times 3 is gonna give you 6w squared. Put my x over here for the sake of room. Okay. I said I'm putting my x over here for the sake of room. Please stop acting weird. All right, thank you. The tablet doesn't have that much memory, so my stylus are coming in tomorrow. So yeah, we use the other computer. All right, so I end up with 6w squared, negative 7w down here. What do I need? The only thing that's going to add to give me negative 7 is going to be a negative 6w and a negative w. It's the only thing that I can do. Negative 1w, negative w, the same thing. So we break this down into negative w minus 6w, bring down the 3, bring down the 2w squared. And now we factor by grouping. So we group this. What's the greatest common factor? We can take out a W, and we end up with 2W minus 1. Here, I can take out a -3 to end up with 2W minus 1. And now bring our GCFs together, W minus 3 times 2W minus 1. All right, so let's go back and review real quick. So we know that two binomials form a trinomial, right? We know that. Two binomials form this trinomial. These two binomials form this trinomial. These are the factors of this expression because they multiply to give us this expression right here. We know that. We also know that Mr. O'Neill back in his day, which was not too long ago, that they had to guess and check and they had to move things around to see if you could ever end up getting this expression here. When A is not equal to 1, we can no longer just say, look at A, look at B and C. A is now saying, you can't forget about me. I'm a part of this as well. So, because this first term is made up of the first two terms multiplied from the binomial, and it's no longer 1. So we can't put X in that X there. We also know that Mr. O'Neill spared our life by showing us the butterfly method brought to us by Ahmad Jama. Okay? And we use the butterfly method to prove the two binomials that we had before. And Mr. O'Neill made a mistake because he forgot that 6 divided by 2 is 3. But he did not make that mistake anymore. And then lastly, your assignment is to do the next 3 problems right here. You're going to upload into Floop, which I'm releasing tonight. You're going to create an account and follow these directions, and then you're going to need it for today, or you can do it today. All right, I don't know how long this video is because Zoom doesn't give me a like a timer or whatever, but you need every part of this, and I'm only giving you 3 problems to do. This has been another Beast Mode production. This is Mr. O'Neill. I'm about to be out in 5, 4, 3, 2,